Well, if I look a little worse for the wear, it's because I just finished my grand entrance for the second time in my life at the Silver Summit 10th anniversary, and I promised everyone that was involved in the production that I would wear the famous top hat and silver tails.
David Morgan, round of applause. He's coming from the back of the room.
It takes guts to wear something that would embarrass Liberace, let me tell you.
All that aside, one of my compadres here in the silver movement, I'll call it, is Bix Weir. Bix has a very interesting take on the Federal Reserve, where we're going, where truth is taking us. And he did his speech, and we're going to kind of go over that. So Bix, why don't you introduce yourself, how long you've been with the silver movement, and what your speech was about today.
Bix Weir. I run roadtoroota.com. It's a website with the goal to expose the manipulation of gold and silver. I've been doing it for 12 years now, mainly working with GATA, and we're getting there. We're educating people and letting people know, how manipulated things are. And my speech was about the mechanics of manipulation, how it's done, who's doing it, and where it's going to end up. And it went over well. I did a poll right at the beginning of how many people believed the silver market was rigged, and every single hand went up in the audience. So, the word is getting out that the market's rigged. Hopefully, in my speech, I gave some insight into how it's done, and it went over great. And the only one guy left that doesn't believe that the silver market is rigged is Jeffrey Christian. So one day we'll get him turned around as well.
Okay, so let's examine it. I gotta say a few words here, because I always get new subscribers, and my contention, this debate, if you want to call it that, has been going on for a very long time. It was exactly the 2 years ago conference here in Spokane. And Al Corlin was the MC, and he gathered us kind of impromptu, and us meant myself, Bill Murphy, Jeffrey Christian, and Roger Whitehan. And the question was, is the silver market manipulated? Jeff stood up and said, if any of my people say yes, you're fired. And of course he said no. And then it went to Bill Murphy, and Bill said yes. And then they went to me, and I'm in the middle, and my statement was, I'm in the middle. And I don't want to sound like I'm in the middle, but you cannot manipulate the overall trend. There's too much free market forces, and believe me, that it's not a free market in silver or gold, or any of the markets for that matter. If you understand the working group on financial markets and just read it, you'll understand that the federal government at all levels, the SEC, the CFTC, the Treasury, etc., the Fed can come into any market that they want at any time and do anything they wish. All that fact aside, there's enough market force, I'll call it, and enough voting by the public and entities that are pushing the price of silver and gold higher. Now, would they be higher than they are presently without the manipulation? Yes. The point I made was this, I'll say it succinctly, that the overall trend cannot be manipulated, but within that trend it certainly is manipulated. That was my statement. Roger Wygant was the last. He goes, I agree with David. So we went on from there. So that's it. For the record, that's exactly what I believe. I don't think that some of these guys, and they're friends of mine, think they're in there like every second of every trade. I don't believe that. I do believe that they do take it down from time to time when they wish to, for various reasons. And it's usually financial reasons, and probably psychological as well, meaning that they do not want this market to be too strong because too many people will catch on to their fraud. Sorry, back to you. Bix, tell me, I was trying to get your first and last name at one time. Tell me where you saw manipulation, how you see it. What did you say in your speech?
Well, what I go through in the speech is basically the manipulation that is admitted to. And it's admitted to by the CFTC, the banks. Everybody admits that they go long on the LBMA and they short the COMEX. That's what the banks do, and they make the spread versus what the futures are trading for. The question is that manipulation? On the face of it, no. But in the volumes of computer derivatives that they add on top, it's massive manipulation. And what, from the data of trading data from the COMEX, last year in 2011, I think it was 95 billion ounces of silver derivatives traded, billion with a B. And the LBMA, which is an association, it's not an exchange, the prices are actually fixed by 11 banks. And they traded 44 billion ounces. They didn't trade. They transferred, supposedly, 44 billion ounces of silver. That amount of silver is ridiculous. The key about the LBMA is it is a closed association. It's not an open exchange market where prices are determined based on buying and selling. The prices are set, fixed in the AM, PM fix by 11 bankers. And those 11 bankers, of those 11 bankers, 9 of them are being investigated for LIBOR manipulation right now. Same story, same bankers setting the prices in the same city with the same motivation to keep the price of silver and gold under control so that they can run their fiat monetary scam. That's where we are now, and with the investigations going on into the LIBOR market, pretty soon at some point it's going to spill over into the gold and silver markets, hopefully, and they can investigate the LBMA and find out why, on a net basis, they're saying they've traded or transferred 44 billion ounces. On a gross basis, it's more like 132 billion ounces that were supposedly traded, which is obviously, it's impossible. So that's kind of what I was saying in my speech.
So where do you see it, how do you see it unraveling? I have my views, I want to hear yours first, because I want to comment first. How do you see this unraveling?
Well, we've got the CFTC investigation, the third investigation. The first 2 investigations, the number one reason they said it's not manipulated is that the COMEX, the futures and option pricing, was pretty much in line with the LBMA, which they called the physical market. But clearly the LBMA is not a physical market because 11 banks set the price and they trade, transfer supposedly these billions and billions of ounces. So the third investigation, it's been 4 years since they've been investigating. The investigation was done probably 3.5 years ago. They don't want to release the results of that because they know it would cause turmoil in the gold and silver market. If you don't control the gold and silver price, you can't control a fiat monetary system, an unbacked system. So that's why I think there's so much government involvement, there's the large banker involvement, there's a lot at stake in keeping the price of silver contained.
Interesting perspective, and I'm not going to disagree with it. It's certainly very plausible. Let me drill down that a little bit. So if the federal government came out, let's say the CFTC comes out and says, we cannot release the results because of national security, and they made that statement, CFTC made that statement, what do you think would happen?
Well, it depends if they continue to allow the rigging of gold and silver. Right now, I'm one of those guys who thinks, yes, it is rigged every day and there is no free market. And you can tell about that by the volumes. You look at the volumes of silver derivatives traded and the volumes traded on the LBMA, it's the onesie-twosie investors, the small guys, even the medium-sized guys, their trades get lost in the wash because these huge banks are throwing literally billions of ounces of derivatives at these markets, and they control them with computer programs. I don't think it's every trade that they rig, but I do think they set a kind of a boundary of high and low where it can go. If it starts getting too low faster than they want it, they'll bring it up. If it starts getting too high, they keep it within a range. And it's easy to do with computers, and hopefully And on the Road to Ruta analysis in my website, I show kind of the beginnings of computer market manipulation going back way back to the early 70s, where these markets are all pretty much controlled by computer trades, and now we just see it more in the news with high frequency trading and things like that.
Okay, so how do you see it unraveling? You see Comex shutting down, you see a non-delivery, what do you see?
I see an implosion in the European derivative market, and that will basically translate into a loss of a couple of those big banks. JP Morgan was 70 trillion in derivatives, and their London whale trade, you kind of haven't heard about it much lately. It's not closed out. There's a lot going on with Greece. If Greece defaults, which credit default swaps are they gonna honor, and which ones are they not gonna honor like they did before? But when the derivative bubble blows, and I do believe with Warren Buffett when he said that it is a weapon of mass financial destruction, and I do believe that the U.S. allowed the freely traded, unregulated growth of derivatives in order to crash that bubble. Because when you have a monetary collapse, the person who wins is the largest debtor. And the United States is by far the largest debtor nation in the world. So at some point, the United States is going to say, okay, we're done with this. We're going to collapse this derivative bubble and wipe clean. Literally, it would destroy all banks, and all debt would literally go away, but all electronic and fiat assets would go away too. So it's a draconian type of way out of the problem, but the United States has always said, it may be our currency, but it's your problem. And the Treasury Secretary, I think back in the 70s said that, and it's true. We can issue all the debt in the world. The question is, are we going to pay it back? And we all know that no nation in the history of the world has ever paid off their debt.
All right, so take me a little bit further. So the collapse happens as you outlined. What happens to those gold and silver owners?
Well, I think if you own the physical gold and silver, you'll do very well. Now, I wouldn't put a price on it because you're talking about a monetary collapse where you'll be happy to have ounces.
Right.
There have to be a restart of what kind of currency are we going to use. Luckily, the United States has our Constitution. We have a history of gold and silver as money. And I think there will be such a huge loss of trust in the system and a lot of anger at the bankers, especially for those people who lost everything. Even the rich and the poor will lose everything, so it's kind of it's a wash of everything. So there'll be a lot of anger, a lot of mistrust that traditionally has always gone back to gold and silver as money. I've heard a lot of people talking about ways to transition away from this system back to a more honest system. There's a NESRA Act, which is the National Economic Stability and Recovery Act. If you listen to the conspiracy guys, kind of tries to jigger the system. I don't think anything like that will work. I think, and I don't think the Amero would work or one world government or anything like that. I think the United States literally will close our borders, put our hands around our people, pull all our troops home, and say, okay, we're gonna develop our own natural resources that we've been hiding for years. We're gonna take care of our own people, put our troops on the borders in case anybody wants to invade us, but we're not gonna invade anybody else. We're not gonna go out throughout the world and be the policeman of the world, and hopefully we'll turn to a guy like Ron Paul and start to really take to heart what he's been saying for 40 years. Remember, Ron Paul's been wrong for 40 years, and you kind of alluded to this in your speech. He said you can't, this fiat money system is going to implode, but it's been 40 years and nothing really has happened. If on the conspiracy side, I see it, the only reason it's happened for so long that people accepted this unbacked money is the rigging of the markets. Gold, silver, the dollar, everything with computers. So we'll see what happens. It's kind of, when you run your head around all the scenarios, it's a glorious ending for the United States, but it's going to be a hard transition.
Great, wow. Glad you made time for me. Is there anything you'd like to say to our viewers before we stop the interview?
I just say if you can find an interview of David in his silver suit throwing up $1 million bills in the air, it was a great moment. I loved it. The crowd was cheering, and it was really fun.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, David.